Before we start this actual review of the film, I want to let you know that there are spoilers contained within, and those spoilers I'm not going to hold back. I'm not going to tell you the whole film scene by scene, definitely not going to do that. However, there are going to be things that I'll reveal, so if you are not you haven't seen the film yet and you don't want to be spoiled, then stop watching now. And secondly, I do find myself swearing, using expletives from time to time. So if you're offended by any words that you either don't know or just are offensive, again, stop watching. So yeah, X-Men Apocalypse carries on 20th Century Fox's version of X-Men. Those of you who don't know, the last film, which was Days of Future Past, was a bit of a time traveling film. So these films are set before the original 3 X-Men films and X-Men Origins and all things like that. Set in the 80s effectively. What they're exploring in this film is Charles Professor X has established his school for gifted youngsters, and basically Apocalypse turns up, tries to take over the world, and the X-Men have got to reform to stop him. So yesterday, in my first video, I renamed the film X-Men Fuck Up because from the trailers that I saw prior to the film, I thought that was going to be a bunch of rubbish, and I also said that I might have been proved wrong about that, but that was unlikely, and it still is, because I haven't been, just driving. So I'm going to be really honest, the film is good in certain points, so I don't want to completely slag it off. The visuals are 99% there. There is a small portion of the film where the visuals are just like, what? You might as well be using strings, because I can see them. The characters, some of them are okay. The storyline, the video will be about 4 hours long if I go into every little thing. So let me talk to you about the good points. For the first time, for me anyway, in X-Men history, on screen, Magneto looks good. He's in a cool uniform. By the time he becomes Magneto again, which Apocalypse, he makes uniforms for everyone. One of his mutant powers is tailoring, and it's quite good. Gets his helmet, all that jazz, obviously, versus Ian McKellen's costume, which was basically a suit with a curtain attached to one side of him. It's really cool, and the other guys look really cool. Charles Xavier still got his hair, but he loses that, and there's an explanation for why he's bald, or why we know him to be bald. But they've changed the timeline using using the last X-Men film. They've changed the timeline, so they explain why the characters are what they're doing. So you start off, you meet Apocalypse, and you meet his 4 horsemen 4,000 years ago, and that's all very cool, very grand Egyptian scene. He's transferring his body into a mutant that can heal, and so that's how he gets his powers. He transfers his current body and all of its power set into a new body, and that body then obviously has that extra power, and he goes on forth like that. But there's an uprising, and Apocalypse gets trapped at the bottom of his pyramid. He's trapped for, well, until the 80s. And then a couple of cults are going at trying to discover him, because they revere him as a god and he's a second coming. And that happens because of Moira McTaggart. And then the first scene you see him, he's walking through the streets, everything's very new to him, he's learning, he still speaks another language, that's cool. He meets Storm in the streets, Storm seems to be running around as some sort of street rat. She's a bit like Aladdin, so stealing stuff, distracting people and stealing things. Then he goes off and recruits Psylocke, and he goes off and recruits Angel, and he goes off and recruits Magneto, who lives with his family, kills a bunch of people, happy days. Now this film, surprisingly, one of the good things was it was extremely funny. There was a good level of humour, and there was also some swearing in there, so it was like kind of little R-rated, not capital R-rated, which was cool. And again, the visuals were wicked. Psylocke looked awesome, but they didn't use her enough. In fact, all of the Horsemen, apart from Magneto, because he's already an established character, weren't used properly. And in this, you know, Apocalypse gives them kind of stretches or enhances their powers. And towards the end fight scene, Angel, or Archangel as he should be known, gets knocked out by banging his head, quite hard I suppose, but banging his head on some iron poles, and then dies. And Deadpool made a wicked comment in the Deadpool film, which is, you know, it was a piss take for him and a dig against Fox, but when he went up to the X-Mansion, he asked, can't you afford any more X-Men? Why is there only ever 3 of you in this big house? Well, there's a reason for that, and that's because 20th Century Fox keep on killing X-Men. And then, you know, so there's none left. So Angel's dead. In the last film, although it kind of got reset because it was a future event, Colossus got ripped in half, and all those guys died. Iceman, all those guys died. So, a bit weird. What was bad about Apocalypse? He was kind of cool. I'm going to be honest and say that he looked like Ivan Ooze. Some of you are going to know who that is. I'm not going to tell you who that is. You should know already. And that's what he looked like, just blue instead. And when he wasn't kind of going wide-eyed, he looked really sad. It was his eyes, the actor's eyes. And if they made him another foot taller, because he was like a 6 foot man, if they made him like 7 foot, then he would have stood out so much from the rest of the mutants just physically. But he looked cool, and every now and again they made his voice deep and they put a little metallic twang to it. That was cool. There was a wicked scene with Quicksilver where he's running around saving everyone from an exploding X-Mansion. That was cool. That was very cool. My biggest problem, Cyclops, he wasn't a bitch, and you got quite a bit of use out of Cyclops. Beast looked like a blue testicle. Like, he should have fur. Now, fur is hair, but it needs to be thick and kind of bushy. And it looked like pubes, blue pubes. It was kind of patchy. And Mystique, still a main focus of the X-Men, although probably an X-Man somewhere in the comics. Never one continuously. Teaching students at the end of the film, go away, stop it. I know she's cool, the actress as well, but stop it. Quicksilver, wicked. The fight scene at the end, the guys are all using their powers to defeat him. Charles is in his head. This guy's very powerful. he's managing to psychically attack Charles whilst taking on 5 X-Men. Cool. Until all of a sudden, Jean Grey uses the Phoenix Force. Now, I'm pretty sure she never got it out of her back pocket, which is kind of how it's put across in this film. It's like, Jean, unleash your power, and then suddenly she's the Phoenix, and the Phoenix is obviously powerful enough to literally tear Apocalypse apart. Yeah? No. That's what I'm saying about that. No. In fact, I closed my eyes because I saw it coming, and then it came, and I didn't, to be quite frank. And that's what you expect to do in the cinema when watching something that you was based on something you grew up on. You expect to be awe-inspired and moved. I was moved out of the cinema about 5 minutes later because it was the end of the film. Wolverine makes a cameo. Kind of Weapon X style-y with the shirtlessness and scruffy hair and some sort of headgear on. Goes and slashes up about 40 blokes. Jean unlocks his memories. He looks like he recognises Jean, which is alright. And then he runs off into the snow. He looks smaller than he has done in other films in terms of his mass, his bulk. But that's cool. That's cool. And then Nightcrawler. I suppose he was alright, but he looked like a kid. He started dressing like Michael Jackson. What I'm trying to say is that for a company like Fox, what you got to do when you get, and they've had the rights to X-Men for a long time, killed fucking half of them, but what you got to do with a film like this is make a good film. Now, understandably, they don't want to give up the rights back to Marvel or Disney. I don't work for either of those companies. I don't know the legalities involved in that. However, what you need to do is give it back and let someone make a proper film. Look what they did with Spider-Man. In 30 minutes, they accomplished more, Marvel, than 2 companies separately have accomplished. Well, sorry, 1 company, it's Sony, but on 5 occasions now, I've accompanied in over 11 hours worth of film. So give them the X-Men. Take the £1 billion that they want to give you for the rights back. What are you doing? Yeah, you can't see because the helm of Kevin Feige has specifically said you have to be true to the source material. But at the same time as making a substandard film that new fans and old fans won't watch. And the idea for me is that if I go back and see a film twice, I'm not saying that it's going to be good because I've seen it twice, but that's what you want to do. You want to go back a second time and see it again. And with this film, I didn't want to see it the first time, let alone the second time. But surely it's going to start damaging the company's reputation. So do things that you're good at, 20th Century Fox, because you have made amazing movies and put your name to amazing things over the years. X-Men, not one of them. And you've got control of the next Wolverine film, which is going to be R-rated. That is not enough to change what you're going to do to that film. It's not. So that's my view on the film. If you want, it's a good film to go and watch, provided that you walk into the cinema not a fan of any X-Men lore. That way you're not going to be disappointed when the whole thing has been flipped upside down and smashed into the floor on its face. If you go in as a fan, you're going to find that you might as well have just sat on an onion, because the film, sitting on an onion is less painful than watching that film. Cool. I'm going to stop driving now. Hopefully some of that's cool, some of that makes sense to you. If you like this video, share this video. If you really like this video, subscribe to my channel. There will be more. If you don't like this video, then you should have stopped watching it before you got to the end. Please comment, please share, and go and watch the film, see what you think. Obviously, this is only my opinion. Peace.